artists have just given a lot, so it'd be good to kind of get some responses, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'd like for them to frame kind of where they are, so that our responses can also be connected to where they are and where they see their questions and their work. So,
I guess that's me.
yeah, because I didn't show it.
Hey everyone, I'm Candace Thompson. Bit about me. I'm a dancer. I'm from Trinidad. I dance with a few people: Sydney Mosley, Andrew Zachary. I run my
Girl, that's in your bio.
That's true. Great. My piece. My piece is dealing with carnival culture. So I'm from the Caribbean, so carnival is like a big part of our culture diasporically. So I'm sort of dealing with where the celebration started from historically and sort of where it is now and how those two interact.
Is there any driving question you're asking yourself right now in your work? That doesn't have to be. I'm just feel like that could help set some frameworks.
Sort of just how do I bring the stories that I've lived without thinking about them as impetus for creating work.
My name is Shamar Watt. Some questions that is going through my head is that of question of power, the question of what a decolonized body looks, feels like, question of what is Maroon, what was their story, and their influence and their engagement in how Jamaica is the way it is today. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I'm questioning myself, questioning, deepening my investigation of myself as a being.
My name is Jonathan Gonzalez. I'm a vamp off of you, Shamar. I think big question, we just came out of, a few of us in the room and here, just came out of a pretty intensive prototype week that Urban Bush Women held for the Choreographic Center, where we were kind of looking at Black radical imagination, what is it, and like how to locate it in your practice. And I think a question I have is obviously decolonizing my body, which I think I'm constantly contending with, and I think a lot of us are trying to say, or saying, Shamar, you're saying that, but similarly with my practice. So like I'm trying to cull from like what is blackness, how is that multiplicitous, what is whiteness, how are we consuming this, and how do we push those things into this space that feels very wild and improvisational. Yeah.
So with that in mind, and with the lenses you came in with and what you experienced over the course of the evening, I'd love if we could offer in this next moment reflections on what we witnessed, what felt significant, what was surprising, what threw you off, what was like, reflected back to you something, so rather than like, I have a question for you, artists, I'm curious about you all sharing back some of what you just experienced and witnessed. Yeah.
It was really interesting, Jonathan, with your piece and the development of, it wasn't until we were in the hallway and then you started to come through the passageway that I was like, well, the way that I saw it, like, you created a ballroom, you know, like, and like this idea of queering the space, like literally transforming the space, changing the space, and then some of the movement vocabulary that you were referencing and embodying. And so I really appreciated that. Like I didn't know where you were going, I didn't know what was happening, and then there was this moment when I was like, oh, this is what we're doing, you know? And then it kind of like broke it apart again for me toward at the end. And so that was just a really interesting trajectory and progression for me as a viewer and experiencing
respond? Is that allowed? Yeah, and I think Paloma and I was sharing this with Paloma when I was teching, but also like my mother was a huge freestyle dancer, and I think I have a very big nostalgia about something that I couldn't experience growing up in New York City. So I call from that as well, you know, I think, just in reference.
Other responses? Yes.
I said something similar last night, but I'm going to kind of go a little further. There was definitely an invitation in each of the works. And that invitation, like, you didn't really give, in a good way, like you didn't give us a choice to say, no, I don't want to be there. You kind of eased us through it. And I'll take it further to not just talk about guidance, but to talk about like this idea of comfort versus uncomfort and raw versus like, you know, all of that kind of those modes. So going through each of the works, I felt like pulled in, even though I wanted to go like this. Like I kept being pulled in until you just had me in your space. And I actually thank you for that because I couldn't run away. So.
Just a similar note, I was thinking a lot about my blood was experiencing a lot. Like at first it was like celebrating with you and it was pumping and it was like going. And then it was, I don't even know how to actually go into the first piece because I've never felt my blood feel like that before. But then with the last piece, I was like the same thing. I was getting like really, my blood was boiling and I was like pissed off and I was offended. And then I was realizing how, as an audience member, I've been colonized, if I can try to find that same word. I don't know what the right word is. And then I was drawn in and my blood calmed down and then you pissed me off again. And so my blood, I feel so alive right now. I don't know what to do with my body. So I had to share that. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, to go along with that, I did notice a repetition of heat and fire in each of the pieces. And that really resonates for me in terms of thinking about jumping fences, which is what I came into the room prepared to see. People jumping across borders and jumping across identities, jumping across spaces and jumping across the water. And it definitely resonates for me that two of the pieces, well actually all of the pieces for me speak to a diasporic understanding around the Caribbean diaspora or a Black diasporic practice or embodying diaspora in a multitude of ways. So I definitely would love to hear more about fire and the work and how fire gets us to a space of jumping fences. But you know, I'll stop with my thoughts about it and maybe in the moment of questions or responses, you can talk about fire.
That was a nice way to sneak in a question.
Subversive.
That was like smoke. That's it, now they're coughing. Yes.
It felt like in all of the pieces, maybe it's like the fire or like the like radical self-examination felt really, like it felt like there's a very self-aware self-examination in all the pieces of like this repositioning of image or self-image or character or gesture, but like embodied vocabulary. Just like in all, I think like in all three pieces, and I don't know if it has to do with diaspora, or it has to do with decolonization or whatever, but this like this shifting and this looking at like all these different facets and presenting to us all these different facets of yourself or whatever you're coming from.
Other offerings, yes.
In each of the pieces, I felt very visible. I felt watched. And you invited us downstairs to come witness things, and I felt very witnessed. Where I was very conscious of my body and how I was sitting and where I was standing, and what I was looking at, and whether I was being looked at by other people here or by the folks who were performing. So there was something about being visible. That was present in all the pieces too. Especially at the end of the second piece where I was here in the front row.
Alright. The idea of being visible, like you just like I felt very active as an audience member. It's easy to be a passive audience member and just watching, but I felt like I was there no matter what. Like it was just really, really, really active. Brain, body, like the blood, all of it just always going.
Starting with when Shamar, you were at the mirror, I was thinking about how self-love can be revolutionary, and that kind of stayed with me watching all three pieces, and that idea of what you love about yourself or not, and so that's what is resonating with me.
Is there anything that's been said that you all want to respond to? This idea, this fire that's snuck in here as a part of this. I also have a curiosity about the signifiers you all are using and what, how you're thinking about those or how those are emerging in your work. But is there anything that you've heard so far that you're curious about responding to, or do you all have questions for each other?
Do you all want to do the fire and the signifiers? What's been thrown out so far?
We could do the signifier.
You can do that. I'm interested in the fire question.
Yeah.
I think I'm interested right now with what this is in the idea of pleasure and that being a space of fire that resonates inside my body and gets me into moving or gets me into the doing of something. And then also like the frustration with working against pleasure, working against perpetual motion, which sometimes feels like pleasure for me because I feel like that kind of is a kind of trance in itself. And working against that in my body creates a different kind of fire, creates a different kind of pressure, and that feels creative and offers a lot of potential for me. And then how those things live culturally, socially, in my body and outside of my body, but that always kind of feels like fire actually. It always feels like there's some kind of burning image or burning self that's always sending the trajectory into making something. But, yeah.
Fire may be the effect, but I think it's cool. It's cool. For me, my perspective on what I'm investigating and instigating is coolness to the point where it may seem as fire. I mean, it is boiling inside, but how can I surpass this fire, this heated place into another? It's like blue fire. It's like it's kind of hotter than red fire, but this blue fire, it looks cool and not really so. But that's where I'm at.
Before we come back in, do you have something to continue along with? Yeah.
I think the thing for me was examining celebration and like what it takes to get people to that euphoric state, and like the evolution of carnival itself, and most of it comes from this idea of resistance, and like celebrating resistance and celebrating triumph through resistance. But it's like it's that like family of activity, that family of fire and boil that we tap into every time we want to experience that. So it's like, yeah, it's fun, but it's like, where's the drive? What revs you up to get there? I think that's where that lives for me.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm always in the fire. Like I'm always. It's a lifestyle. It's a place as a black man. Yeah, every day it's like something. It's whether it's internal or external, but both those are in battle.
I want to say as a holder or creator or of a container that I do feel like fire is a part of or kindling. Like I feel as though the people who are in the fellowship act as kindling for one another's fires in a certain kind of way. And maybe it's not all kindling, like maybe somebody acts as air, maybe somebody acts as water, but there's an elemental quality to the community. And I feel as though the community or the container actually allows for people to shift their elements depending on what the moment is, whether they feel cool at the moment or whether something has them hot at the moment, and that there's room for each of us to be the multiplicity of elements that we come into the room with. That has been a foundational interest of mine. Yeah. So it's, yeah. 2 more people were, yes.
Oh, I feel like in both of your pieces, there was this like moment that was really overwhelming, I think, for me. And like you were talking about blue fire and you were talking about this ecstatic state. And I felt like that happened in both of your pieces. And for me, it was really connected to the breath. And Shamar, it's just, I feel like it's so amazing that to see you, like, you're so calm and like there's a quietness around you, but then like in your piece, that one moment when you were shaking, I mean, like the whole room was shaking and the air was shaking, like everything, there was this huge force in the room, which was like, I don't know, it was awesome.
I'll just wrap it up, I guess. I don't know if we're going to keep going, but I wanted to, once again, like yesterday, thank Paloma, because as a Black artist myself, being able to see last night and tonight, and to see so many people within like my generation making work that I just wouldn't have been able to see back to back like that, is inspiring, and makes me kind of want to cry. So I like to thank you so much for bringing this together and opening it up for everyone.
I mean, I need this. Like, that's, the reason to do something like this is like, well, shit, I need to see this work and be a part of community, and, so, yeah, there's a way in which, like, the impetus for doing something, it's not like, oh, I'm gonna create I'm making the thing that I need, and in conversation with people around, like, where's the I and the me and the we, and like where do all those things kind of blur themselves, and how can we hold space to be the range of things that you just talked about, like how can we hold space for Shamar to show us the range of who he is in this evening. That's a deep concern of mine, as this field, as the outside gaze, regardless of race and dependent on race as well, as the outside gaze starts to like locate us, like GPS us, in ways that don't serve our generation. Yeah. Yeah. We could talk more. I'm really on the wine thing. I have a 1-year-old, so when I'm away from home for like stretches of time, I'm like, well, I can have some wine. But we can also talk more informally, because this is like a particular kind of dialogue, and I think we can have another kind of dialogue downstairs, and if there are particular things that you all want to talk about with particular people, I think we can move to that next space. Yes, Sydney?
I just want to say, wow, all of you are sitting here, that you're all brilliant, and that I'm honored to make work among you.
Thank you for saying that. Real quick, I think we have to leave this space, so if the artists could actually stay for a second, just so we can take a picture, and we will meet you downstairs, we promise, like quickly. Thank you. All right.